just like the tribal chief. You better acknowledge me. I'm, of course, your host, the most charismatic man in entertainment. Welcome back to part two. We're going to be talking about, sports entertainment. And, as the great one used to say, nobody beats the most charismatic man, dead or alive. I am just the GOAT. I'm the GOAT. But, I hope you guys having a great week. You enjoyed part one talking about WWE. And I want to stay on that path. I want to talk about sports entertainment because so much is going on. We're in a new era, 2026, but we're also in a new era for the UFC. UFC is officially partnered with Paramount Plus. They signed the 7 year, $7.7 billion deal. So $1.1 billion a year for the UFC to be on Paramount. We're kicking this thing off. They have left the ESPN, and it's been a whirlwind so far. No more pay-per-views, which I think for fans, I think the pay-per-view model is outdated, and I'm gonna talk about that in a second. But we're now doing number events for US fans. We get to watch it an hour earlier. We don't have to pay pay-per-view prices anymore. Screw $80. I can get a lot of in and out fast food for that price. All right. So we get to save some money. But the UFC kicked off their new partnership with UFC 324, Justin Gaethje, Paddy Pimblett, a lot of new things going on. But I want to take this step by step because I want to jump too much. Paramount Plus, a lot of people are excited for this partnership. UFC is definitely happy about it. I think a lot of new changes is going on, a lot of new things are happening, and it's been off with a hitch. It's been great. Video quality has been phenomenal. Production value has been increased, and I think it's been better. But there has been some situations that happened so far in the first month that the partnership has started. So let's talk about Paddy Pimblett, Justin Gaethje. You see, 324, the first pay per view to kick off this partnership after a 6 week break. So, I want to talk about the UFC 324 as a whole. I want to talk about the main event because this goes into a bigger point with the UFC and some of the things happening. So, obviously, previously I mentioned in episode part one of this episode that TKO brought WWE and it also bought UFC. They're merged together. And it's very clear and evident that since TKO has taken over, that the UFC and the WWE has shifted their focus. As storylines are important, but it seems more about the bottom line that's important. And one of the biggest reasons why I bring that up is a lot of people had a lot of comments and complaints about UFC 324's main event, Justin Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett for the interim UFC light heavyweight championship, or lightweight championship, not light heavyweight. A lot of people felt like it was undeserved for either guy to be fighting for that interim belt without Arman Sarukian fighting for it. He's the number one contender, rightfully deserved. But Justin Gaethje, who was ranked number four, Paddy Pimblett, who was ranked number five, a lot of people felt that Paddy Pimblett was getting a push, that he had Dana White privilege, as they say, Dana White, president of the UFC, that the UFC wanted Paddy Pimblett to become the next big star for the WWE, for the UFC, and they was going to do that any means necessary. So they was going to feed him Justin Gaethje. Everybody wrote off Justin Gaethje like he was some has been. They treated Justin Gaethje poorly even after he won. It seems to me a lot of people were sour on Justin for some reason that's weird. But one of the biggest criticisms about that was it seems that a lot of people complain about the matchups, and it's not about merit anymore. It's about entertainment value. where the rankings don't care. The UFC don't care about the rankings. Dana White is going to put on the matchups that he feels is going to make them the most money, with the people he feels could be big stars like Conor, John Jones, Ronda Rousey, that short list of megastars, because they don't have many outside of Alex Pereira, Charles Oliveira, Ilya Taporia, and Islam Makhachev. Um, a lot of people think that Paddy was given the easy way to the title. Justin Gaethje was just, he complained enough to that the UFC just gave him the bone, but they really wanted Paddy to win, so they have a major star for England, a major star for the UFC, and they also have a built-in storyline for whoever he's going to fight, whether it's the UFC lightweight champion Ilya Taporia or Arman Sarukian. It was built in for Paddy Pimblett to be the breakout star of 324. A lot of people complained about the main event. They complained about how sloppy it was, how not technical it was, that Justin Gaethje and Paddy was just swinging for the fences with no technique, and it was just sloppy all around. And that it goes to the bigger conversation about entertainment. It's not about sport anymore. It's about entertainment. Someone said this best, and I can't remember. I think it was Israel Adesanya, I should say, who said this best. Justin Gaethje is a specific fighter. He is my favorite fighter of all time outside of John Jones. No Justin Gaethje slander will be tolerated. Justin Gaethje fights a specific style. He's known for that. He's called the highlight for a reason. The most performance and night bonuses and all these bonuses of all time. The guy has never been in a boring fight ever since I've started seeing him years ago. Um, they complained about how he was swinging for the fences. Paddy Pimblett was showing no fight IQ, no technique. They were just going balls to the wall violence. And that is not a proper main event. And that's why the UFC put that match together, because they don't care about the technique. They only care about who is more entertaining. And I just got to say, I push back on that narrative because, one, Justin Gaethje isn't John Jones. He never claimed himself to be. He's very technical, but only when it's necessary. He's like Dustin Poirier. They love the chaos. When they in there, they go for it. There's no I'm gonna sit here and hit you with a leg kick, run around for 30 seconds, get booed, and none of that. No, they go full blown out. And that's what he cares about. And that's what the UFC wants. Because Paramount, they paid a lot of money for the UFC. They need their investment back anyway. So why not give the first kickoff numbered event, not pay-per-view anymore, to someone they know is going to deliver, not only for the fans, but for Paramount? Because the bottom line is Paramount relies on subscribers. They need more people to subscribe. And now that they're paying so much money for the UFC, they need to recoup some of those losses. How do you get people to buy your program? How do you get people to buy that subscription? You give them something of value. Justin Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett was that. The numbers came out after. Over 3 million people subscribed to Paramount to see that fight. And I'm sure some of those people subscribed anyway. But a lot of people subscribed to see that fight. And that's what they want. They need to recoup some of that money. And they delivered. Not every fight. One of the biggest things I see a lot of complaints about is people complain about, you know, fighters being boring, they're too technical, they're waiting, they're stalling, they're taking too much time, it's not enough action. When we think about, and I've talked to Damian DeBell, I've talked to James Lynch, UFC, well known. This is a sport where they care about social media. They care about going viral. What do you see when you see the UFC on social media? It's not some guy, hugging somebody. It's a knockout. It's something flashy. You see those brilliant moments and fights that they can post and get people. Oh, you saw that? They want to they're catering to the casual fans, right? And they care about those casual fans because those are the people who's going to bring money. When you're a hardcore fan, yes, they're going to throw you a bone every once in a while, but they know you're going to watch anyway. WWE, UFC, any TV show, any company, they know those hardcore fans are always going to be there. But how do you get those casuals in? And so sometimes when that happens, merit based performances don't count anymore. And a lot of people are worried about the UFC moving into more of an entertainment performance era than they are about a sports era. I get it. I do think it's not right that Arman Sarukian is being thrown to the back burner. Um, Masfar Evloev in the UFC featherweight division should have fought uh, Alexander the Great Volkanovski at UFC 325 in Australia, or Lerone Murphy. He should have fought Alexander Volkanovski at 325, but they gave it to Diego Lopez. They did a rematch. And a lot of people are complaining about that. They're upset because one, Diego Lopez don't deserve the rematch so soon. He just lost to Volkanovski a year ago in 2025. Why is he getting a rematch over some of these guys who's on, 5, 6, 7 win streaks, who's been chomping at the bit for a title fight for over a year? And it comes down to this. UFC is a business and they're a sport, but it's entertainment. That's what people tune in to see. Fights are always going to be the focal point, but it's everything else. Because one of the biggest criticisms, not to jump around too much, but Valentina Shevchenko, Chael Sonnen has went viral and has gotten a beast with her, as a lot of people has criticized her for her fighting style. She doesn't. She goes to decision a lot. She's dominant, but it's not entertaining. It's not slobber knocker. It's not, crazy ball to the wall action. It's very technical. And we see this a lot with wrestlers. And I'm gonna say that I'm aside that for right now. But we see fighters Volkanovski, Valentina. There's a couple other names in there, and I'm probably forgetting. Champions and athletes, the elite, the top of the division, that they're really good. They're really skilled. Nobody is hard to beat them, but they go to decision a lot. They don't win by knockout. They don't win by TKO or submission that often. They go to decision a lot, and people find that boring. But at the end of the day, too, you can't call that boring and then complain about Justin Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett, because what do you want? Do you want a very technical fight where somebody employs a game plan that may not be social media friendly, but gets them the win? Or do you want somebody who cares about the social media going viral and they just throw technique out the window sometimes and go balls to the wall to entertain the fans? And we're in a weird space with the UFC and sports entertainment where people want both. They want the technical stuff, but they also want the viral moment. They want the stuff that looks good on camera. Michael Chandler, and I'm going to address him because he's getting a lot of criticism. Um, he's a prime example of that. He's and I love Michael Chandler. I'm not dogging him one bit when I say this, but Michael Chandler is a great fighter. From Bellator to UFC, he has been incredible. However, one of the biggest knocks about Michael Chandler, what Gaethje went through early in his UFC career, is the fight IQ gets thrown out the window, and they just fight with no care. They just go out there to end the fight, just bloodbath, just straight entertainment violence. And it makes them a lot of money doing that. Not everybody's going to be John Jones, who, is going to have entertaining fights, but they're very technical, very dynamic, and they stay with that game plan. Michael Chandler gets called out a lot for his fight IQ because the guy will, he won't use all his tools well. They care more about the flashy knockout, the entertaining fights than they do about just winning. You know, it's a weird time, and we are seeing a shift where UFC is cutting, athletes and fighters who are very good. They win a lot, but they may not be the most entertaining. Whether it's promos, whether it's hyping the fight up, whether it's press conferences, or their fighting style. They're just not entertaining at all. And even if you win, you should be a UFC fighter. If you're on a win streak, if you always win, you're undefeated, you should be in the UFC. But we're in a new era now where it's not just sport entertainment, it's sports entertainment. You see the difference? The first one used to be about sports entertainment second. Now it is sport entertainment. And so now they care about the McGregors of the world, the Ilias, the Colby Covingtons, those type of the very outspoken, outlandish characters. Why? WWE is not they they feed off the WWE. The UFC feeds off the WWE, vice versa. WWE feeds off UFC. You'll see how they'll combine and take certain things from each other. You know, the WWE, for instance, WWE takes the post fight press conferences that the UFC does. Now they implement it into the pay per views. Now you're seeing, UFC with some of their production values as a very WWE esque theme to it, where there's more performances behind the walkouts and the press conferences and stuff. You're seeing more characters shining and winning over the masses. Sean O'Malley, for instance. I think we're in an age where Dana White and the UFC care about who can put butts in seats. Alex Pereira is one of them. Islam Makhachev, he is a fan favorite all across the board, but he's from a specific region. Same with Ilia Topuria. He represents Spain and Georgia. He makes them a lot of money, and not only in those markets, but in the United States as well. They may not be the biggest US household names, but they make the money in certain demographics that they can't get without them. Now in the United States, you have very few outside of John Jones. There's not many who can compete with him in terms of name value for the promotion. So now the UFC is in a tough place. John Jones is retired, semi-retired. Conor McGregor, who knows where they stand at this point. Alex Pereira is near the end of his career. Who do you build up? How do you build up new names and new people for your promotion? You reward the people with the personalities. And it's always seemed in the last 5 years, even with ESPN, that the UFC valued people who knew how to market themselves. It makes their job easier, but it makes you more money and it makes them want to push you because you can lose 4 or 5 times. But if people are still willing to pay to see you, the UFC's making money, you're making money. It's a win-win. It's business. You could be a very dominant fighter who was great at fighting, but you don't sell yourself. You don't do a lot of press conferences. You don't do podcasts. You don't do interviews. You don't really hype yourself up. It's going to take you a lot longer to get to the title shot. And we've seen this with Bilal Muhammad. We've seen this with Masar Evloyev. We've seen it with Magomed Ankalaev. People like to mention race and religion and all of this. But if you break down to the core, it's the people who are really good but don't promote themselves. They always get pushed second but to the guy who may not be as dominant as they are, but they could go out there and put on a show. And people got their cameras out, they're ready to record them. Those are the people the UFC cares about. Do I think there is still some meritocracy in the UFC? Yes. But I do think they don't care about the rankings anymore. They don't follow certain rules that they used to anymore because the sport has grown. And so many people like to talk about how they used to do things in the past. Well, a lot of fighters aren't what they used to be. A lot of them are more skilled. They have more weapons. They have more access to training equipment, recovery, opportunities. They have more access to social media and making money through partnerships and collaborations and stuff. So they know that they're a brand. UFC is a brand. They're a business now. They're established. They can get broadcast rights whenever they need. They're not at that homegrown stage where they used to, where, Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, that era where the UFC was still in its infancy. Now they're established. They're trying to compete with the NBA, the MLB, NHL. and we're seeing them doing commercials during the Super Bowl and big football events and stuff. They're trying to compete with the real top American sports. And how do you do that? Social media is one of the biggest ways to do that. And as someone who does content, actor and stuff, you don't post the boring stuff on social media. Some people care, don't care about what they post. But as a company who cares about the bottom line, about making money, especially now with this new partnership with Paramount, where you gotta, when they're trying to make money, what do you post? You post the stuff that makes people go, "Ooh, I want to repost that. I need a comment. That was fire. That was insane. That was crazy." You want to get stuff that gets people talking. How do you do that? You get people who like a Kobe, who say outlandish things in interviews, who has a character and a persona that you can clip and put on YouTube and get 500,000 views in 5 hours. You can post highlight reel finishes on Instagram and YouTube and social media. You can post those things and get people to come, to watch your product. You don't post the boring, you know, double leg, to wrestling. I'm not saying wrestling is boring, but that's where the company is now. How do you grow and expand to the casuals? And it's the same complaint with the WWE, but they're different. They're different in the sense that UFC is more, more violent and is fighting. And so I think the UFC definitely does need to take a step back. I think with the new partnership, having to step in and give Paramount a reason, and giving them giving them interest in their product. They want to give and reward the people they know is going to come out and show out and put on an amazing fight for Paramount and for the fans. But I also think they need to have some type of rules, have some type of backbone as well, because now it makes it hard for people who are trained in a discipline, who has a game plan, who wants to go out and win. How do you make more money? Well, sometimes now anymore, it's not about winning. It's about going out there, getting a bonus, and putting on a show, because that's when you get rewarded. You don't get rewarded for great performances. You get rewarded for finishes and entertainment. And I think that's just the nature of sports entertainment and entertainment in general. It's not about the skill level anymore. It's about the entertainment value, the entertainment factor. And it sucks as an athlete, as a UFC fighter, but I think it's a lesson to be learned. We're seeing this in acting right now, and I've touched on this before. Where they want to see your social media account. They want to see what you're doing outside of acting, because it makes it easier for them to market you, use you, see if they can benefit from your platform as well. And I think that's just the nature of the game. That talent, unfortunately, right now, it seems talent to some degree is taking a backseat to excitement. And Sugar Sean O'Malley, a lot of people criticizing him because now it looks like the UFC is going to give him another title shot. They're going to give Kamaru Usman a title shot who don't deserve it. And this is all subjective. I have no problem with Kamaru Usman getting a title shot against Islam Makhachev. But that just seems to be the theme that a lot of people complain about, is the people who deserve it aren't getting it. And the people who's had many opportunities at the same thing that other people want, they keep getting it because they have established themselves as the more popular fighters of their division. So they're going to keep getting handed easy opportunities and stuff like that. And I think that goes into a bigger theme, a bigger scale on what's going on. And I think part of the reason all of this is happening, and it's a controversial take, is the fans' fault. Why is it the fans' fault? Because I think fans have allowed UFC to get away with doing this. And what I mean by that is, they complain about the Sugar Shans, the Patty Pimlets, the people with the Dana White privilege of getting opportunities. Oh, you cut the line. You don't deserve it. This guy deserves it. He's on a 5-5 win streak. He's been chomping at the bit. The champion wants to fight him. Why are they doing this matchup? But the fans are the same ones that boo the Massars, the Laurel Murphys, the other names that you can list. They boo them because they might have a wrestling heavy approach. They don't finish fights nearly as enough as some of these other people. Sugar Sean O'Malley has had so many highlight reel knockouts that it's easy for the UFC to replay it over and over and over again, whether it's in a fight package or social media. And I think that fans is the cause for it. Because when you allow a company to get away with what they does for so long, it's hard to bring it back. The leash has been extended way too much. The boundaries have been crossed far too often and far too long that it's hard for them to establish that boundary. So, in one hand, the UFC does care about the rankings, who deserves what. But the fans also play a big part in how they dictate it because let's say UFC do give the fans what they want. A lot of times they go on the internet and they see people complaining about it. Oh, this fight was boring. Oh, this is horrible. I was not entertained. This was not fun. And then they complain about that. But then you get a Justin Gaethje fight and a Paddy Pimblett fight, and people are still going to complain, but they'll say this is way more entertaining than what I just saw last week. So it becomes hard because for someone like a Masfar Evloyev, who deserves a championship opportunity, people also complain about his fighting style. So how do you win? How does the UFC win? How do the fans win? At some point, the fans, we are the ones, whether it's WWE, UFC, we control to some degree how things happen, how things play out. So we keep booing the same guys we want to be launched into the atmosphere to get those tiny opportunities. We can't be booing them as well because then the UFC, these companies here, oh, they don't get behind them. Why should I give him the championship opportunity, make him the face of this division when I have a Kobe Covington who people cheer and he might say some reckless things on the mic, but people come in and when they want to see him. Well, they want to see him win or they want to see him knocked out. They want to see him. They become okay. Let's go with Kobe Covington right now, and then maybe if he doesn't win, we'll give it to the rightful guy who deserves to run um, the opportunity. So it's a slippery slope. I think fans we have to be cautious on how we use our voice because we also dictate how the UFC goes about these matchmaking opportunities as well. One of the things that I also want to talk about was fighter pay. So it was rumored and announced officially by Dana White that fighting of the night and performance of the night is going up. It's not $25,000 anymore, ladies and gentlemen. It is $100,000 now. And anybody on the roster on the fight night or the number card, anybody with a finish, whether it's submission, KO, TKO, they're going to get an extra 25,000 added to their paycheck. A lot of people celebrated this because the rules before was only the performance of the night, fighting night was 25,000, and then every once in a while the UFC might throw a guy who had a finish, a highlight reel finish on a card. Not exactly 25,000. It could be 5,000, 3,000, or 20,000. They'll just send them something off camera that they want to announce, which is fine. But inflation happened. A lot of people felt like it wasn't right, and now with this new deal, a lot of people are looking for more money. You know, you're making $1.1 billion a year. You telling me I can get a pay increase? These bonuses can go up. Dana White announces the new move, so a lot of fighters, especially lower entry fighters, they're gonna benefit the most because instead of just making whether they win or lose, instead of making 12,000 if they lose or 24,000 if they win, they could potentially make 125,000 or double their money. So It incentivizes people to go out and give their best performance. And that becomes the biggest issue because a lot of people complain about these bonuses and saying that it's incentivizing fighters to just go out there and get the finish. No matter the game plan, what their opponent does. Go out there and show out and show off. And that's how you get rewarded. And I think a lot of people are upset about it because now it's pushing this rhetoric that if you're not entertaining, if you don't go out there and make people happy and entertain, you don't get any extra money. You just get whatever your contract is, and that's it. And I'm in between because I feel like in one hand, yes, you do, and if they do want more Justin Gaethje's than they do Miles Farr, Evloyev, and I'm using those names because if you watch UFC, you'll know who I'm talking about. These two names, especially Justin Gaethje. But they want more Justin Gaethje's in the world by far because Justin Gaethje not only is a great fighter, but he is entertaining. Nobody will ever say they ever saw a boring Justin Gaethje fight. And that's what the UFC wants. They want people to walk away and say, "Oh, I want to spend money to go see this guy live. I want to go spend money and get the subscription at Paramount or whatever platform they're on. I want them to buy merch. I want to buy this and that. I want to support." And I think that fire to pay has been a very contentious talk. I've talked about it numerous times here, so I'm not going to make this long. But I do think this is a step in the right direction. I think increasing the bonuses and allowing more athletes to make more money is always beneficial because it could go back to the original way where a lot of fighters, are still working 9 to 5 jobs, doing DoorDash. It's famous that the UFC champion Alexander Pantoja, former, he lost his title to Joshua Van in MSG in 2025. He was a DoorDash Uber driver right before he became champion. Imagine being a top 5 ranked UFC flyweight, light heavyweight fighter, and you're still doing DoorDash or working a 9 to 5 job just to make ends meet, to pay for your training camps, pay for your training, all that stuff. So yeah, the bonuses is not exactly world breaking, and there's still a lot of work to be done. But I do like the nice step, the step that they just took because now they're showing that they're willing to do something opposed to just talking about it. So now more fighters, at least the lower level fighters, the big John Jones, McGregor, Alex Pereira, Israel Adesanya, they may not care as much. But the guys who aren't at that level, who are still climbing their way up to the top, those are the guys who's going to benefit the most because now it gives you some financial flexibility and freedom to not only win, but also make some extra cash for you and your family. So, yeah, one hand is great, but second hand, yeah, I do think fighter pay still needs to be discussed. Justin Gaethje went viral during UFC 324 Fight Week. We said, hey, look, the UFC, they signed this big deal, and I'm not seeing a pay increase. So yes, I do think there is some conversations that need to be had about UFC fighter pay. Conor McGregor talked about how now he has to renegotiate his contract if he comes back to the UFC to compete. It's going to open up a conversation, especially when the companies, deals and partnerships and numbers come out. People are going to see this and they're going to want a piece of the pie. But I think it's well deserved. I think fighters deserve to get paid more, and the UFC deserves to earn more as well. They put the grassroots down. They got denied for over a decade from many major cities and venues, and now they're reaping the rewards of the hard work that they work for. So, fighter pay is always going to be contentious. I could go about that on all day, but at the end of the day, I do think the UFC has some work. There's some things that need to be addressed and discussed. Uh, and there's some cakes and stuff that Paramount. I want to give Paramount a shout out actually real fast because UFC 324 went off without a hitch, but a lot of complaints happened, whether it was from the amount of commercials, uh, uh, taking away certain things that us fans would love to see, walkouts, coaches' corners. They took that out and replaced for commercials. But this, with 325, they listened. They heard the fans. They cleaned up their act and they got that squared away. So I do want to give them credit that they are paying attention to the fans. It's still early though. It's still early February, so there's still 3 more years. Oh, 6 more years actually. 6 more years to go, but it's looking nice. I think as long as companies can listen to the fans, listen to the people who drive their business and help drive their bottom line, I think we're all going to win. I think we're all going to win. The UFC is going to win. Justin Gaethje and them going to keep winning. But at the end of the day, this is it. The sports entertainment. It's entertainment factor. If you don't have it, you're not going to get it. And it's unfortunate. I don't like the way the UFC and the WWE is going in certain things. But that's entertainment. Acting is the same way right now. Music, same way. Anything involving entertainment, it seems more about the bottom line than it does about talent. And I hope that changes in the near future. That people stop caring about just dollar signs and care about the talent because people want to see quality product as well, not just quantity. They want to see some quality there as well. So I think this has been a great episode. I'm in here, I'm getting all stuffy and all that stuff. But you know what? The sick can't hold me down. Nothing can stop this show, this podcast from going on because at the end of the day, I love you guys. You guys, a lot of you have been supporting me for many years. Some of you guys, even if you're new, you're supporting me, you're supporting this podcast, and I really appreciate all the love and support that you guys give me. But like I said before, at the top, feel free to let me know what conversations you want to hear, topic points. Just like the tribal chief, you better acknowledge me. I'm the most charismatic man. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode. I got some good things cooking up, and can get some man. But the Prince of Fresh Air is cooking.